I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It's time to continue our discussion on Shadowrun. We've been talking about the awakened world and spellcasting and conjuring spirits and everything magical, and we're continuing with conjuring and spirits as we're talking. Let's dive into the actual rules of conjuring. Now, when you're conjuring, you're summoning one of the spirits that's associated with your tradition into the world. It is a complex action that you will choose the force of the target spirit you're attempting to summon once you attempt it. You will then make a summoning plus magic opposed test, opposed by the force of the spirit you're attempting to summon. Of course, any kind of modifiers you have to summoning spells would apply here. The net amount of hits that you receive tells you the amount of services that the spirit has for you. That basically means the more net hits that you get, then the spirit means the amount of services it's going to have. Now, the force is going to be, of course, limited by your magic score. You can only have a force up to twice your magic score for a spirit. Now, similar to with spellcasting, if you are summoning a spirit with a force higher than your magic score, it is going to be considered overchanneling, and it will be physical drain you're going to be resisting instead of stun drain. Now, regardless if you're successful at summoning the spirits or you fail at it, you will have to resist this drain. The minimum drain value is always going to be 2, but it could be whatever number of successes the spirit got. Not the net number of successes, the number of successes it got overall on its die test will determine the amount of drain you're going to take. So if a spirit rolls very well on its force and you still manage to get some services out of it, it's going to be a much higher drain than if it had rolled very badly and you got a whole crud ton of services, or maybe you didn't roll very well either and got only a few. If you're knocked out by the stun damage or killed by the physical damage by the attempted summoning, the spirit's just going to depart. It will ignore you, it will go away, it will have no longer connection to you. Now, the types of spirits, as I said, are going to be limited by whatever tradition you are. And you can only have, when you summon a spirit, it will arrive astrally nearby you and more than likely manifest nearby to you. You, of course, could keep it there and have it on ready to do stuff with it, or the fact is you could have it sort of fade into the background and not really dismiss it. It would still follow you around because you have services, but you would put it on a standby. Putting on a standby or bringing it back is a simple action, so it is oftentimes that you will have one like this, but you are still limited. You can only have one unbound spirit to you anytime and up to your charisma attribute in bound spirits, so you're limited on both of these. Spirits that are on remote services or are on standby count against these totals. So that means if I had an unbound spirit on standby, it counts as it. Any further attempts would fail. Now, glitching makes different materials. If I glitch on my attempted summoning, it could cause that the spirit manifests in an unusual way or does something that I don't want it to do. If the spirit glitches, then it gives me an extra service. Critical glitches, of course, are going to be extension these, but worse. A critical glitch means I could summon a spirit, it would be out of my control, and want to kill me. More than likely, since summoning is very simple, it more than likely will just leave, or maybe just do something bad to you and then leave. It's not as bad as what I will talk about when you're trying to bind a spirit and you critically. Now, banishing is the severing of a link between a spirit and its summoner. Banishing is the opposite of summoning, and when I use banishing, it is a complex action just the same. I would roll my banishing plus magic opposed by the spirit's force if it's unbound, or the spirit's force plus its summoner's magic if it's bound. Each net hit I receive reduces the number of services that unbound or bound spirit had. If it reduced to 0, then it's an convenient action. It will leave. It will go away back into the astral plane. At that point in time, I have the option as the banisher of using a summoning attempt to gain control of said spirit, So there is a possibility that if that spirit's not in my tradition, I can still have it as a summoned spirit. It would be, of course, unbound to me, but I could make that attempt because I severed it from someone else and effectively stole it. Now, regardless, I have to make a drain attempt. The drain attempt is more potent than the drain I would have faced regardless before. Again, if the spirit's force is higher than my magic, it will be physical rather than stun. But the drain value is going to be twice the number of successes it got on its attempt. So if it is a bound spirit, it will more than likely have a lot more successes than if it was unbound, and therefore a much higher drain. If I would then attempt to summon it to my side, I would have to resist both the drain of attempting to banish it, whether I was successful or not, and the attempt on summoning it. So regardless if I'm attempting successful, I have to hit drain there. If I am successful and it's banished and I try to summon it, I might have to hit drain a second time. Now let's talk about binding. Now binding requires a material cost of 500 times the force of the spirit you're attempting to bind. You do not necessarily need a magical lodge, but oftentimes they are used. Now it would again be an opposed test. We're rolling your binding plus magic versus the spirit's force times 2. So twice the normal force that a spirit, twice its force it would use in rolling this in your attempts to bind it. You need one net success to bind it to you, but for each success after that is what gives you the services. So you need one to start the connection between you two. Every other success after that gives you services. So you need at least 2 successes to get an actual service out of this bound spirit. At that point in time, it's connected to you, and of course it could interfere with you, just like I said. You will resist the drain, just like you were resisting the drain with the summoning, but the chances are it's going to have much more of a net hits because it has twice its force, so the drain value is going to be much higher. Should you be knocked out or killed, well, should you be knocked out, the spirit will most likely turn on you for the attempt and try to murder you also, or cause damage, rampage around the area because it will be an uncontrolled spirit and very unhappy about what you attempted to do. They don't like being bound. If you're killed, of course, it might still go on a rampage. Getting a glitch on it, of course, will have similar glitches to that. Critical glitch means it's unbound to you, uncontrolled, attacking you. If it glitches, it might give you extra services. Like I said before, you can only have a number of bound spirits up to your charisma attribute. If you try to have any more, the ritual fails. Now, you can rebind a spirit if you're running low on services. Effectively, it would be the exact same kind of ritual, the exact same kind of money cost, but the result of it would be all services. That means each net hit you get would be a service. Unlike before, where you had to have one initially start the binding, you have the connection bound. If you had used the banishing and summoning combination before, you are actually allowed to use a binding ritual on it. So you could bind a spirit that would not traditionally be connected to your tradition by doing that. Now let's talk about watcher spirits, because watcher spirits are sort of lesser beings, often thought of maybe being manifestations of the magical powers of those you trying to summon them, sort of things like that. They are really lesser spirits that only exist on the astral plane. Now, they can manifest physically on our plane here with the same kind of manifestation, but they are purely astral creatures in and of themselves. They always have a force of 1, and all of their attributes are reflecting of their force, i.e. 1. They are very single-minded, and each watcher spirit you summon can have 1 task assigned to them. They are effectively like well-trained dogs on their intelligent level, so they will act accordingly to that. They will send out whatever tasks you have, but if they should meet some kind of obstacle or barrier that they can't get around, they just won't. They'll run out the clock on their being summoned and just end it. Now, it is not like the normal tests. It is a success test, not an opposed test. And each success you get has a watcher spirit exist for 1 hour. For then you will resist the drain is equal to the number of successes you have. Effectively, the number of hours that you have the spirit is the amount of drain you have. When you roll that test, you do not necessarily need to have that watcher spirit for the amount of successes you got. You can limit the number of hours and therefore limit the amount of drain. It is up to you. The number of watcher spirits you can have is independent of the number of normal spirits you can have, but it is still similar to the bound spirits, limited by your charisma attribute, and that would be the amount of ones you can have at any time. You have the same mental link as you have to spirits, to watcher spirits, so again, people can use those to track you. And they can be banished just like normal spirits. Every success on a banishing test just reduces their time there by 1 hour. They only have a force of 1 anyway. Now, they have a number of things you can do with them. You could function them as sort of an attack dog, having them sort of protecting you. You could use them to track something, using them to like go after someone, find some kind of trail, usually one that's magical based. You could use them as an astral alarm. When certain types of people or someone that's not authorized enters into an area, they could basically give you an idea of what's going on. You could use them to deliver a message. They can create sort of sound or images. They can recreate pictures that you show them. They can go and display these to people. In the same way, you can use them as a distraction, or like having a slogan go off somewhere, that you could have a watcher spirit in an area just announcing something to the world because it can create that sound, or showing a picture at the same time. You could have a couple doing both of them together. The other last ability you can do with them is, of course, you could shadow someone, have them tail someone, and using your link to basically figure out where they're going. Once they've stopped, reporting back to you, giving you the information that you need to figure out where someone's going. Regardless, on that end, if a barrier is hit anytime, usually an astral barrier, the spirit will just wait there. It can't get through it. It doesn't know what to do. It's too dumb to. So that's it for today. I talked about conjuring and summoning spirits. I talked about the mechanics of conjuring, banishing, and binding. I talked about watcher spirits, which were lesser spirits that you could also bring into existence. That finishes it up for the conjuring section. Next time I'm going to bring into astral plane and talk about manifesting onto the astral plane, looking into the astral plane, and what it really means to your characters. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, please check out my Patreon, linked in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.